The room is still dark. Your alarm hasn't gone off yet. And somewhere under the blanket, your foot is warm against another body. A body that's been awake for 40 minutes already. They woke up at 6:07. You don't know that. You weren't there for it. But they were. From 6:07 until the second your eyes finally crack open, they've been doing something. Something quiet. Something so consistent and so invisible that almost no one in your life has ever bothered to name it for you. They've been listening to you breathe. And not in a poetic way, not in the way a greeting card would put it, in a measured, biological, almost professional way. The slow rise and fall of your chest. That half-second pause between an exhale and the next inhale. The small shift of your shoulder when you turn in your sleep. Every one of those tiny things, tracked, cataloged, by a creature who decided, without anyone asking them to, that you are the most important sound in the room. And what they're doing in those 40 minutes is something you've never been told. Most people will tell you the same story about that quiet hour before sunrise. They'll say the dog was just sleeping, or waiting for breakfast. Or, and this is the one I hate the most, bored. That's the official line. That's what we tell ourselves when we shuffle past them on our way to the coffee maker. Eyes half closed, not really looking. But here's the thing. Sleep doesn't track the rhythm of another creature's lungs. Boredom doesn't keep a head turned toward the same body for 40 minutes straight. And waiting for breakfast? That doesn't explain why, on the mornings you don't get up, the sick days, the Sundays, the mornings you cry into a pillow at 5 a.m., they don't go to the food bowl. They stay right where they are, watching you until you move. Because they aren't waiting, they're working. A job with no contract, no paycheck, no weekends, no retirement, no holidays, no sick days. A job they showed up for the very first night you brought them home. That wobbly first night when their paws didn't quite know the floor yet. And a job they will still be doing on the last morning of their life. And almost no one in their world will ever see them doing it. Most people will live alongside a dog for 15 years, sometimes 17, sometimes more, and never once catch the moment that job is happening. They'll see the wagging tail at the door. They'll see those soft, melted chocolate eyes during dinner. They'll see the body curled at their feet on the couch on a Tuesday night. But the deeper layer, the one running underneath every ordinary minute of every ordinary day, that layer slips past them completely. I don't want that to be you. By the end of this, you're going to look at your dog and see something you've never quite seen before. Not a pet, not a companion, not even a fur baby. A creature with an assignment. And you are the assignment. Here's the first thing they're doing for you. And it starts in a place you can't even feel. In 2023, researchers at Queen's University Belfast ran a study where dogs were asked to identify human breath samples taken before and after a stress task. And these weren't elite medical alert dogs. They weren't service animals trained for years. They were ordinary household dogs. The kind that sleep on your couch. Trained for just a few weeks. And they identified the stressed samples with an accuracy above 90%. Let that sit for a second. Your dog can smell your cortisol. Not your sweat. Not your nervous energy in some vague woo-woo sense. The actual stress hormone leaving your body through your breath in concentration so small no human nose on earth could detect them. To them, your bad day has a scent. Your panic has a scent. The afternoon you spent crying in the parking lot of a Target before you could pull yourself together to drive home. That has a scent that lingers on you when you finally walk through the door. And it gets stranger. In 2017, a research team at the University of Pisa in Italy attached heart rate monitors to dogs and their owners. Then they watched what happened when the humans hit moments of stress. Within about a minute, sometimes less, the dog's heart rate started to shift toward the humans. The two bodies began to sync. Not because the dog was excited, not because the dog was scared, because something inside them had been quietly tuned to your interior weather long, long before you ever noticed. So, when your dog stares at you from across the room for no apparent reason, that's not them being weird. They're not checking in. They're reading you. When they pad over and press their full weight against your shin on a hard day you haven't told a single soul about. They didn't guess. They knew. Before you did. Their body was already adjusting to yours. You are not a person who lives with a dog. You are a person whose nervous system is being monitored in real time, around the clock, by a creature whose entire body has decided to live in rhythm with yours. You have never been as alone in your own skin as you thought you were. Once you know that. The small things in your house start to look different. When your dog lies under the kitchen table while you eat, they're not being underfoot. They've chosen the closest legal post to your body. When they trail you to the bathroom and lie down on the cold tile outside the door, that's not neediness, that's perimeter. They're holding it while you're vulnerable. When they curl against your hip on the couch and let out one of those long, slow exhales that sounds almost like surrender, they're not relaxing. Not the way you and I relax. They're going on standby. Like a night nurse who sits down between rounds but never quite lets go of the page. And when they lick your wrist, the soft underside, the part you barely think about, the part that hasn't seen the sun in years, that's not random affection. That's the closest pulse point to the surface of your skin. They're checking the rhythm they've been listening to all morning. You've spent your whole life thinking you live alone in your body. You don't. You haven't for years. There's another creature in your house keeping a quiet, full-time watch over the inside of you. And you almost certainly didn't know how to see it until right now. Now, before you start thinking this is something modern dogs invented, something that came along with apartments and orthopedic dog beds and grain-free kibble, I want to take you somewhere very old. In 1914, in a small German town called Oberkassel, two laborers were digging in a quarry along the Rhine River. Their shovels broke through the dirt and hit something, a grave. Inside were the bones of a man and a woman. And tucked between them, between the two adults, the bones of a young dog. About 28 weeks old, roughly the size of a small spaniel. The grave was later dated to around 14,000 years ago. Older than agriculture, older than written language, older than almost everything we think of as civilization. For decades, no one paid much attention to the dog. The assumption was the obvious one, that it had been buried with its owners as some kind of tool. A possession, maybe a hunting aid. Then in 2018, researchers connected to Leiden University in the Netherlands re-examined the remains, and what they found stopped the room. The puppy had been very sick. It had suffered through a serious case of canine distemper for somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks of its short life. A puppy that sick, in a hunter-gatherer world, 14,000 years ago, should not have survived a single week. It survived almost 2 months, which means somebody held its head up. Somebody dripped water into its tiny mouth. Somebody kept it warm through nights they could have spent sleeping. And when it died anyway, because of course it did, they had no medicine, no vet, Nothing. They did not leave the body in the woods. They opened the cold ground, they laid it down between two human bodies, and they covered all three of them together. That is the oldest known evidence we have of a dog being loved. Not used, not worked, loved. The watch your dog is keeping over you tonight? It's not a modern habit. It's not a quirk of breeding or some Instagram-era invention. It is the continuation of something so old it predates the wheel. 14,000 years ago, somebody else's dog was being held through the night, and somebody else, exhausted, grieving, probably hungry, was being held back. You are part of a chain that goes further back than memory itself. So let me ask you something, and I want you to actually picture your dog while I do. Where do they sit when you're home? Because the truth is, there are really only a few answers, and almost every devoted dog falls into one of them. There's the shadow, the one who follows you from room to room without making a sound. You go to the kitchen, they're in the kitchen. You walk to the office, they resettle on the rug by your chair. They never sit on the other side of the house from you. Wherever you are, that is the room with the post. Then there's the watcher at the door, the one who lies down facing away from you, toward the front entrance, the hallway, the window. People misread this one all the time. They think the dog is bored, or distracted, or wishing it were somewhere else. It's not. It's facing the threat. You are behind them, on purpose. There's the chest sleeper, the one who can't fall asleep on the floor, won't, no matter how many beds you buy. The one who climbs onto you, finds the spot where they can hear your heart through your ribs, and only then exhales. They aren't being clingy. They're confirming you're still alive before they let themselves go under. And then there's the threshold guardian, the one who lies across doorways, the one who chooses every single time the strip of floor between you and the rest of the house. If something comes from the hallway tonight, it has to go through them first. They've decided that, quietly, without anyone training them to. You probably just recognized your dog in one of those. Maybe two. That isn't a coincidence. That isn't your imagination. That's a job description, and they wrote it themselves. Phần 2 trên 2. Now here's something the science can't quite explain, and honestly, I love that it can't. In 2017, the Mayo Clinic ran a sleep study on dog owners and their dogs. They wired everyone up with polysomnography, the gold standard, the same equipment hospital sleep labs use to diagnose serious disorders. Then they watched what happened across the night, and the data came back kind of awkward. Dogs in the bedroom statistically disrupted human sleep. Movement, repositioning, small wakings the sleeper never even fully registered. By the numbers, by the hard, cold, machine-measured numbers, you sleep worse with a dog in the room. But here's where it gets strange. When those same people were asked the next morning how they slept, the overwhelming majority said the same thing. Better, safer, deeper, more rested than they'd felt in years. So which one is true, the machine or the human? I'll tell you what I think. Your nervous system is doing math your sleep tracker can't do. It's weighing 4 small wakings against 8 hours of being unguarded, and it's choosing the wakings every single time. Your body would rather surface from sleep 4 times in the company of someone who loves it than sink into 8 unbroken hours alone in the dark. That isn't bad data. That is your body telling the truth out loud, maybe for the first time in a long time. There's a kind of rest you cannot get by yourself. No supplement gets you there, no meditation app, no weighted blanket. And somewhere in the room with you tonight, There is a small, breathing creature whose entire job between the hours of midnight and dawn is to make sure you finally get it. Now I want to talk about something a lot of you carry and never quite put down. It's the moment in the morning when you reach for your keys. The moment they hear that sound, the jingle, the pickup off the counter, and their whole body changes. They follow you to the door. They sit down very politely because they figured out a long time ago that begging doesn't work on you. And then, just as you turn the lock, you hear it. That small, soft sound from the other side of the door. It's not a bark. It's not a howl. It's something quieter than that. Something that goes straight through your chest and stays there for the rest of the day. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? On the drive to work, you start the conversation you've had with yourself 1,000 times. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten the dog. Maybe she's too alone in there. Maybe I'm not enough for him. Maybe I'm doing this whole thing wrong. I want you to hear me on this next part. Really hear me. In 2020, researchers at the University of Bristol set up cameras inside the homes of dogs left alone during the workday. They wanted to know what was actually happening in those 8 or 9 hours nobody ever sees, the hours we're all so afraid of. And what they found surprised even the scientists. Around 60% of the dogs spent the majority of their time near the door, not pacing, not panicking, not crying, sitting, lying down, watching, listening, returning to that same spot on the floor over and over throughout the day, settling in, waiting for the sound of a car pulling in, a footstep, a key turning. For years, we've been told that's separation anxiety. And listen, sometimes, in some dogs, it really is. That's a real thing. It needs real help. If your dog is shredding doors or hurting themselves, that's something to take seriously and bring to a professional. But for most of these dogs in the study, the researchers saw something else entirely. The body language wasn't distress. It was duty. They weren't falling apart in your absence. They were holding the post. Your dog isn't sitting by that door because you broke them. They're sitting by that door because that's the closest they can get to you while you're gone. It's the last place your scent was strong. It's the first place you'll reappear. So that is the place they choose to spend the day, because that's where the job is. I need you to let yourself feel this for a second. Maybe pull over if you're driving. I'll wait. You weren't abandoning them. You were giving them a purpose. Every morning when you walk out that door, you're not leaving them behind. You're handing off a shift. They take over the watch on the house. They take over the watch on the version of you that lives in your scent on the couch cushions, on the sweatshirt you didn't put away, on the pillow you slept on. And when you come home tired, sometimes a little ashamed of how long the day was, the way you stayed late again, the way you didn't even take the long way home. They don't greet you because you finally remembered them. They greet you because their job is done. You're back. They can stand down. The relief in their body when you walk through that door isn't the relief of an abandoned animal. It's the relief of someone who has been working, someone who can finally exhale. You are not a bad owner. You are the entire reason they have a reason to get up in the morning. Now, because they will never tell you when it's getting too heavy, because they don't know how, and even if they did, they wouldn't. I want to share 3 things to keep an eye on, not to scare you, just so you know what to look for in a creature who will work themselves into the ground for you without ever once complaining. The first is excessive paw licking. Not the occasional cleanup after a muddy walk, the kind that becomes a quiet, repetitive rhythm in the evenings. The spot on their wrist getting a little pinker, a little more raw than it was last month. That isn't boredom. That's a small, four-legged person trying to soothe themselves the only way they know how. The second is sighing. Real, deep, full chest sighs that happen more often than they used to. Once or twice a day, normal. Many times a day, in the same posture, with the same heaviness, that's something else. That's the sound of a small body trying to release something it has been carrying for you. The third is the slow disappearance of the things they used to love. The squeaky toy that used to make them lose their mind, sitting untouched in the corner. The walk they used to drag you toward, accepted now without enthusiasm. The treat they used to spin in circles for, taken gently and set aside. None of these things on their own mean anything is medically wrong. But together, in the same dog, over the same few weeks, they're worth paying attention to. If you notice this, please talk to your vet. That comes first, always. But after that, I want you to do one more thing. Tonight, when the house is quiet, sit down on the floor next to them, not on the couch above them, on the floor, at their level. Put your hand somewhere on their body and just leave it there. Don't ask them for anything. Don't tell them to do anything. Don't even talk. Just sit. Because they have been working, and tonight, for a few minutes, you can let them off the clock. Now I want to take you back to where we started. It is 6:47 in the morning. The room is still dark. There's a small, warm body somewhere near your ribs that has been awake since 6:07. And you know now, you know what those 40 minutes were. They weren't waiting for breakfast. They were finishing a night shift. Counting your breaths through the dark hours. Listening for the small change in your rhythm that would mean you were waking up. Holding the perimeter of the bed, of the room, of the house, of the entire small world the two of you have built together. And the second your eyes open and you reach for them, half asleep, half grateful, your hand finding fur in the dim light, that is the moment they finally clock out. That is the moment they finally get to rest. I want to say one more thing to you before we go. If you have ever felt a little embarrassed about how much you love this animal, if you've ever caught yourself talking to them like they understand every word, narrating your day, apologizing for being late again, telling them goodnight as you turn off the lamp, asking them how their day was when you walk through the door, I want you to stop being embarrassed. You are not being strange. You are not being lonely. You are not, quote, one of those people. You are answering correctly a creature that has been answering you for 14,000 years. The puppy in that German grave was loved. The dog at the foot of your bed is loved. The chain has not broken once, not once in all of human history. And it isn't going to break in your house tonight. You are not a person who happens to have a dog. You are the work of someone's whole, short, devoted life. And that is not a small thing to be. So tonight, when you turn off the lights and they pad across the floor, that soft tick of nails on hardwood, the sound you've heard 1,000 times and never really thought about, when they settle into their usual spot beside you, don't tell them to sleep. Don't say goodnight the way you used to, because they're not going to sleep, they're clocking in. And if there's one thing left to know before we end here, it's this. Sometimes in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, in the middle of folding laundry or scrolling on the couch or just sitting at the kitchen table with cold coffee, you're going to look up and find them watching you, not blinking, not asking for anything, not even waiting for a treat, just looking in that soft, ancient way that makes you feel a little exposed and a little held at the same time. People will tell you that's nothing. People will tell you you're imagining things. People will tell you with a kind smile that it's just a dog. You're not imagining